Gray fluorescent lights flickered overhead as Leonard Jackson crouched on the cold floor of Redwood International Airport's high-security detention wing. His breathing came in ragged bursts, each inhale scraping his throat like broken glass. Outside the thick, reinforced window, he could see the tail fin of the plane waiting at Gate 47, Flight 722. Destination, Valmira. A country he'd never been to. A country where a conviction already awaited him. A country where, once that plane landed, there would be no more appeals. No more calls. Only a sentence carried out in silence. A glowing digital display above the door blinked steadily. Flight 722, departure in 3 hours. Len pressed his forehead against the metal bench, chains rattling softly at his ankles. His wrists were red and raw from the cuffs that had cut into them for hours. He had screamed himself hoarse earlier that night. Now the screams had dried up, replaced by a bone-deep exhaustion that felt heavier than any chain. But something inside him hadn't given up. "I want to see Eclipse," he had told the security chief earlier, his voice cracking. "Please, just one last time." Chief Batista had frowned behind the glass. "A dog? This is an international security facility, Mr. Jackson. Not a visiting room." "She's all I have left," Len had whispered. "Please." Batista had stared at him for a long moment, then nodded once, tight-lipped. "I'll see what I can do, but don't get your hopes up. That was an hour ago." Now, as he sat in silence, dread coiling tighter and tighter in his chest, something inside him finally snapped. A deep, guttural sound tore from his throat. He slammed his fists against the steel bench, again and again, metal ringing beneath his hands. "I didn't kill him," he shouted, his voice ragged, bouncing off the sterile walls. "I didn't kill him. I swear to God I didn't." No answer, no footsteps, only the low hum of ventilation. He threw his body against the door, rattling it in its frame. "You can't send me to die like this." His fists pounded until the skin split, red smeared on the steel. "You can't let them take me." He slid down to the floor, chest heaving, tears burning his eyes. "I didn't do it," he whispered. "I didn't." He buried his head in his arms, rocking back and forth like a man drowning in invisible waves. Outside, a guard paused by the observation window, hesitating. He lifted his radio to his mouth. "Chief, he's having another breakdown. You sure we're going through with this?" Chief Batista's voice crackled back, weary but firm. "Hold position. No changes unless the order comes from higher up." The guard lowered the radio. He looked through the glass at the broken man inside. "God help him," he murmured under his breath. Behind him, the intercom crackled to life. "Final security check initiated for Flight 722. Leonard didn't hear it. He was too deep inside his spiral, too lost in the terror of knowing that every minute ticking by brought him closer to a plane he couldn't stop, a sentence he couldn't outrun. And somewhere, far beyond the fences and runways, Helen Griggs's phone lit up in the darkness of her kitchen. Incoming call. Redwood International Security. Helen stared at the screen, heart slamming against her ribs. She picked up. "Hello, Miss Griggs?" Chief Batista's voice came across the line, tight and professional. "This is Chief Batista at Redwood International. I'm calling regarding Mr. Leonard Jackson's final request." Helen's breath caught. "What? What request?" "He's asked to see Eclipse. The dog's registered under your name." Helen's free hand covered her mouth. He wants to see Eclipse? We've received conditional clearance," Batista continued. "But we're on a tight clock. If you want this to happen, I need you and the dog at Terminal 4 security within 90 minutes. After that, it won't be possible." Helen's chest constricted. Her gaze darted to the dog bed in the corner, where Eclipse was already sitting up, sensing something. "I'll be there," she said, voice trembling. "I'll be there, I swear." "Understood," Batista replied. "We'll be waiting." The call ended. Helen lowered the phone, staring at Eclipse's expectant face. She wiped her eyes, forced a brittle smile. "Come on, girl," she whispered. "Let's go see him." She grabbed the leash. Eclipse jumped to his feet, tail wagging hesitantly. As Helen swung the door open, dawn was just breaking over the city, streaks of pink threading through the gray sky. But inside her chest, the light felt impossibly far away. She locked the door behind them, heart pounding as she sprinted to the truck. And somewhere, behind steel doors and glass walls, Leonard Jackson sat in the glow of a blinking departure clock, eyes fixed on the distant runway. Waiting. Waiting. Hoping. Helen Griggs slammed the truck door shut, the engine roaring to life beneath her trembling hands. The dashboard clock glowed 4:12 a.m., 90 minutes. That's all the time she had to get to Redwood International, clear security and bring Eclipse to the man waiting behind steel doors. She threw the truck into reverse, backing out of the driveway with a screech of tires. Eclipse stood in the passenger seat, paws on the dashboard, tail wagging anxiously. "Hold on, boy," she murmured, glancing at him before flooring the gas pedal. "We're gonna get there. We have to." The streets were eerily empty at this hour, save for the occasional delivery van or early commuter. Streetlights flashed overhead in rhythmic intervals, casting fleeting shadows across her face. Her eyes burned from a sleepless night spent staring at headlines, the same words over and over. Leonard Jackson, flight to Valmiera scheduled today. Final appeal denied. The world had moved on without him. 5 years since the night everything collapsed. 5 years since she watched him get dragged away in handcuffs, accused of killing a man neither of them had ever truly known. And now they were sending him away. Out of the country. Into the hands of a justice system that didn't believe in second chances. Her grip on the wheel tightened. "You're innocent, Len," she whispered, blinking back tears. "I never stopped believing that." A red light appeared up ahead. Helen tapped the brakes but didn't stop completely, checking both ways before rolling through. Every second counted. Beside her, Eclipse let out a soft whine, sensing the urgency in her posture. "I know, buddy," she said shakily. "I know you miss him. We're gonna see him again. I promise." Her phone buzzed against the cup holder, a message from a friend. "Saw the news. I'm so sorry, Helen." She ignored it. Another buzz. "They're really putting him on that plane? This can't be happening." Helen swallowed hard, keeping her eyes fixed on the road. She couldn't answer anyone. Not now. As she approached the freeway entrance, a flashing construction sign loomed overhead. "Expect delays, lane closure ahead." "No, no, no," she muttered, swerving onto the on-ramp. Brake lights stretched in a long, unmoving line ahead. Her heart hammered. Her fingers drummed nervously against the steering wheel. A minute ticked by. Then 2. She shifted lanes, inching forward. "Come on, move, move." Eclipse whimpered again, nudging her arm. Helen looked at the clock. 4:28 a.m. "If we miss this," she breathed. Her mind raced through alternatives. Surface streets? Would they be faster? Or risk staying on the freeway? A memory flashed. Len at the park with Eclipse, laughing as the dog chased birds under the morning sun. That smile, that quiet gentleness people never saw in the headlines. That was the man they were about to send away forever. "I won't let them take you," she whispered fiercely. Suddenly, an opening appeared in the next lane. Helen gunned the accelerator, darting between 2 trucks, tires screeching as she squeezed through. A horn blared behind her. She didn't care. She sped down the open shoulder until the exit sign for the airport appeared. Redwood International, 3 miles. She gripped the wheel tighter. "We're gonna make it." She flew past the final intersection, taking the airport access road at 55, 60, 65. The first hints of dawn lit the sky in faint orange streaks, casting long shadows over the tarmac. The control tower loomed ahead, blinking red against the dark horizon. At last, the terminal signs emerged. Terminal 4, International Departures. Helen veered toward it, tires skidding slightly as she rounded the curve. At the security checkpoint, 2 guards stood waiting beside a black-clad figure with a badge clipped to her jacket. "Chief Batista." Helen slammed the truck into park, throwing the door open before the engine fully stopped. "I'm here," she gasped, gripping Eclipse's leash tightly as the German shepherd jumped out beside her. Batista approached, nodding solemnly. "We're cutting it close, Miss Griggs. We need to process him now." Helen wiped sweat from her brow. "Please tell me he's okay." Batista hesitated. "He's holding on." Helen's stomach twisted at the ambiguity of those words. Eclipse pressed against her leg, his blue eyes scanning the unfamiliar surroundings. "Let's get you both through security," Batista said. "There's not much time." As they walked toward the private entrance, Helen glanced toward the distant gates, where the silhouette of a plane rested under blinking lights. 3 hours until departure. 3 hours until the point of no return. She took a deep breath. "Hold on, Len," she whispered. "We're here." Anton Delocqua sat alone in his cramped apartment, the city's pre-dawn glow leaking through half-closed blinds. His desk was cluttered, case files, printouts, old photos, a corkboard pinned with threads and scribbled notes. A blinking cursor on his laptop pulsed in silence, waiting. He rubbed his temples, exhausted. The clock read 4:35 a.m. In less than 3 hours, Leonard Jackson would be gone. Shipped off on Flight 722, out of U.S. jurisdiction, into the black hole of Valmira's system. And there'd be no pulling him back. Anton's fingers hovered over his keyboard. He stared at the open folder on his desk, the old case file, stamped closed in bold red ink. But it shouldn't have been closed, he thought bitterly. He'd been the lead investigator 5 years ago. Back then, the evidence had seemed airtight. Leonard's fingerprints on the knife, a suspicious bank deposit, a witness who placed him near the scene, open and shut. But 2 years ago, whispers started surfacing. His former partner, Miller, had confessed unease over the chain of custody for the murder weapon. The fingerprint swab, the questionable witness lineup, a second crime scene report that had supposedly gone missing. And now, no one wanted to talk. The department washed their hands of it. The DA's office celebrated the conviction. Promotions were handed out, and Leonard Jackson sat in a cell, counting down the days. Anton's phone vibrated, a message from Miller. "You sure you want to reopen this? They'll eat you alive." Anton typed back, "He flies out today. If I don't try, it's over." A pause. Then, "You're on your own, brother." Anton tossed the phone aside, jaw tight. He'd been on his own for a long time. He opened his laptop, navigating to a restricted law enforcement database. His badge still carried some weight, even if unofficial. He typed in the name, Raymond Kincaid, the victim. The wealthy real estate magnate whose murder had triggered this entire ordeal. A long list of holdings, shell companies, offshore accounts scrolled across the screen. Anton narrowed his eyes. Too many layers for a guy who supposedly only ran construction projects. He pulled up phone records tied to Kincaid's number the week of his death. Most were routine business calls, but 2 numbers stood out. One labeled private, unregistered. The other flagged as a burner phone. Anton clicked for location pings. The burner phone had pinged near Kincaid's penthouse the night of the murder. A chill slid down his spine. That's not Leonard's phone. He checked the timeline. 11:42 p.m., 15 minutes before estimated time of death. He searched the number against known contacts. A name surfaced, Walton Green. Anton leaned back, exhaling slowly. Walton Green, a fixer, a middleman known in certain dark circles for cleanup jobs. He'd popped up on Anton's radar years ago, but charges never stuck, and yet Green's name never appeared in Kincaid's official case files. Why? Anton grabbed a legal pad, scribbling notes. If Green was near the penthouse, if Kincaid had hired or been betrayed by Green, then Leonard might have been nothing more than a patsy. Suddenly his phone buzzed again. A text from his digital contact. Got more. Green's offshore accounts show large wire transfers week before Kincaid's death. All routed through shell cord tied to Kincaid's companies. Anton's heart pounded. A payoff? A setup? A contract? He stood abruptly, shoving files into a satchel. He grabbed his jacket, checked his watch. 4:52 a.m. He needed to get these records into someone's hands, fast. The governor's office? The DA? Or the airport security chief? Another message popped up. One more thing. Surveillance from an ATM 2 blocks from the penthouse shows Green withdrawing cash at 11:30 p.m. Anton cursed under his breath. Green had been right there, and the prosecution never brought it up. He pulled open his apartment door, stepping into the quiet hallway. The city outside was waking up. Traffic hummed faintly in the distance. He locked the door behind him. This isn't just about Leonard anymore, he thought grimly. It's about all of them who lied, who buried this, who made it vanish. He descended the stairs 2 at a time, phone pressed to his ear. The call rang once, twice. "Batista," answered the security chief, voice clipped. "Chief," Anton said urgently, "you need to hold that plane. I've found something." A pause. "We're past protocol, detective," Batista replied. "I've already stretched every line for his request. I don't have authority to stop an international transfer without cause." "I have cause," Anton said. "I'm sending you files now. You forward them to the governor's legal counsel. If they don't at least stay this extradition, they're about to execute the wrong man." He heard Batista's exhale. "Text it. I'll escalate." Anton pulled up the files, attaching documents furiously. "Done," he said. "Sit tight," Batista replied. "I'll call you back." The line went dead. Anton stood still for a moment on the sidewalk, feeling the weight of 5 years pressing down on him. A plane sat waiting at the airport. A man sat shackled in a holding cell. And in his hands, Anton finally held the threads to unravel it all. He just had to make them listen. He glanced east, where the faintest edge of sunlight crept over the skyline. "Hang on, Leonard," he murmured. "I'm not letting them take you without a fight." He sprinted toward his car. Inside the high-security transfer wing of Redwood International Airport, Leonard Jackson sat silently on the edge of the metal bench, chains clinking softly with every small movement. His meltdown earlier had left him exhausted, his body slumped, but his mind still racing. A clock on the wall blinked. 5:23 a.m. 2.5 hours left. The door's mechanical lock disengaged with a harsh buzz. Leonard barely lifted his head. Chief Batista stepped in, her face taut with something between duty and sympathy. "You've got 10 minutes, she said quietly. Behind her, Helen appeared. And at her side, Eclipse. Leonard froze. For a moment, the entire room seemed to dissolve, the weight of chains and steel walls falling away. "Eclipse," his voice cracked, fragile as glass. The German shepherd's ears perked. Then, like a switch flipped, Eclipse surged forward, dragging the leash from Helen's grip. His paws skidded on the tile floor as he barreled across the room. "Wait." A guard started to call, but Batista raised a hand, stopping him. Eclipse leapt, landing squarely against Leonard's chest, licking his face wildly, whining, barking, his entire body trembling with joy. Leonard fell backward onto the bench, arms wrapping instinctively around the dog's neck. His face crumpled, laughter and tears spilling together. "You still remember me," he whispered, burying his face in Eclipse's fur. "Oh God, you still remember." Helen stood in the doorway, her hands pressed over her mouth, eyes shining. Leonard glanced up at her, blinking rapidly. "Helen?" She stepped forward, kneeling beside them. "I didn't think they'd let me bring him," she said, voice shaking. "They almost didn't." Leonard's throat closed up. He reached for her hand, gripping it tightly. "You came," he murmured. "You both came." "I told you," she said softly, tears brimming. "I never stopped believing you." The room felt suspended in a fragile peace, a bubble of warmth in the middle of cold, institutional walls. Eclipse pawed at Leonard's lap, licking away the tears streaking his cheeks. "I tried everything," Helen whispered. "Every lawyer, every journalist, every appeal. They wouldn't listen." Leonard swallowed hard. "I know you did. I know." He leaned his forehead against hers. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He shook his head. "No, you've nothing to be sorry for." Batista checked her watch, clearing her throat. 8 minutes. Helen turned, her voice urgent. "Chief, can't we have more time?" Batista hesitated. "I'm already stretching every protocol, Miss Griggs." Leonard sighed deeply, stroking Eclipse's ears. 8 minutes is more than I thought I'd get." Helen looked at him fiercely. "No, it's not enough. We're still fighting, Len. Detective DeLoc was working on something. He's sending files to the governor. There's a chance." Leonard's gaze sharpened, hope flickering faintly. "A chance?" Helen nodded, gripping his hand harder. "We're not giving up. You hear me? You're not getting on that plane." Leonard closed his eyes, overwhelmed by the surge of emotions, hope, fear, disbelief. "I don't want to believe it," he admitted quietly. "Not after everything." "You don't have to believe it," Helen said. "You just have to hold on." Eclipse whined softly, pressing closer. Leonard smiled faintly, rubbing the dog's head. "You were always the smartest one," he whispered to Eclipse. "You knew I wasn't a killer. You were the only witness who never doubted me." The German shepherd gazed up at him, blue eyes steady, tail sweeping slowly across the floor. 5 minutes, Batista called gently from the doorway. Helen's breath caught. "I'll be outside when they... Leonard squeezed her hand. "Don't leave." "I won't," she promised. "Not this time." She stood wiping her eyes and stepped backward toward the door. "I love you, Len," she said, voice breaking. "I love you too," he whispered back. She gave Eclipse a parting stroke on the head. "Look after him, boy." Batista guided her out, pausing to glance back at Leonard. "I'll give you 5 extra minutes," she said quietly. "Don't tell anyone." Leonard smiled gratefully. "Thank you." The door closed, leaving Leonard and Eclipse alone. He leaned down, resting his forehead against the dog's. "I'm not ready to say goodbye," he whispered. "Not yet." Eclipse licked his nose, tail thumping gently. Leonard closed his eyes. Let there be time. Just a little more time. Outside, Helen wiped her face, pulling her phone from her pocket. A notification blinked. A text from Detective Delacroix. "I've got something. Sending to Batista now. Stay close." Helen's pulse kicked hard. She stared at the security doors, hope and terror rising in equal measure. Inside the cell, Leonard hugged Eclipse tighter. A plane waited on the tarmac. A countdown ticked in the control tower, and somewhere, justice was still fighting its way through the cracks. A red digital clock in the transfer wing blinked ominously. 6:02 a.m. Leonard sat cross-legged on the floor, Eclipse pressed against his side, both staring at the door as if willing it to open with news. The clock ticked relentlessly toward his fate. Every second felt louder than the last. Outside, in the sterile hallway, Helen paced in tight circles, phone clutched in her hand. Her thumb hovered over Delacroix's message. "I've sent the files to Batista, waiting on the governor's office." She dialed. He answered instantly. "Helen." "Anton, what's happening?" she demanded, barely keeping her voice steady. "They're saying the transfer proceeds in less than 2 hours." "I know," Delacroix said grimly. "I'm outside the courthouse now. I've called in every favor I've got. Batista's forwarding my findings up the chain, but it's going to take someone with guts to actually stop that plane." Helen's throat clenched. "Is it enough?" "I don't know," he admitted. "We've got Green tied to the victim's accounts. We've got his phone pinging near the penthouse that night. But without a direct link to the murder itself, it's circumstantial." "But it's something," Helen pressed. "It's more than Leonard ever had." "Agreed," Delacroix said. "But politics moves slower than the clock." Helen's eyes darted to the security door. "Then make it move faster." He exhaled sharply. "I'll call the governor's legal team again." The line went dead. Helen lowered the phone, chest heaving. Batista stepped out of her office, face pinched and pale. "I just spoke to the governor's counsel," she said, voice tight. "They've received the evidence. They're reviewing." Helen's hope surged. "Will they stop the transfer?" Batista hesitated. "They're considering a stay, but they want more." "More?" Helen's voice cracked. "We're running out of time." "I know." Batista rubbed her forehead. "Legally, I can't stop the flight unless I receive an official order. And as of now," she trailed off. Helen stared at her in disbelief. "Leonard's gonna get on that plane unless someone grows a spine," she burst out. Batista's lips pressed into a thin line. "I'm not unsympathetic, Miss Griggs," she said quietly. "But if I defy protocol without a legal mandate, I risk my badge, my entire department." Helen's fists clenched at her sides. "Then risk it," she whispered fiercely. "Risk it for the right thing." Batista held her gaze for a long. Her phone buzzed. She answered, listened in silence, her expression unreadable. Helen watched, every nerve stretched taut. Finally, Batista spoke into the receiver. "Understood. I'll await written confirmation." She hung up. "Well?" Helen demanded. Batista inhaled deeply. "The governor's counsel is authorizing a temporary stay if additional evidence tying Walton Green directly to the crime can be confirmed within the hour." Helen's knees nearly buckled. "An hour?" she whispered. "Yes. And if not?" Batista's eyes darkened. "Then the transfer proceeds." Helen's breath came fast and shallow. Inside the holding room, Leonard glanced at the clock again. 6:07 a.m. Eclipse whined softly, resting his head on Leonard's knee. Leonard stroked the dog's fur absently, his mind racing. "Any second now," he murmured. "Any second." The door buzzed. Batista entered, her expression caught between official and human. "Mr. Jackson," she said, standing stiffly. Leonard looked up, hope flickering. "Do they know?" "There's been a request for delay," Batista said carefully, "but it's conditional." Leonard's heart sank. "How conditional?" "They want more evidence," she admitted. "Otherwise, protocol resumes." Leonard exhaled slowly. "So it's still a countdown." Batista nodded. "You're not on the plane yet, Mr. Jackson," she said, "but the clock's still running." Leonard looked at Eclipse, then at Batista. "Can he stay?" he asked quietly. Batista hesitated. "Just until the next call," she said softly, offered a faint smile. "Then let's wait together." Outside, Helen's phone buzzed again. Another message from Delacroix. "Heading to the data center. Found something buried in the forensic logs. Might be our link. Pray they haven't scrubbed it." Helen closed her eyes, gripping the phone tighter. "Please, Anton," she whispered. "Hurry." In the distance, a jet engine roared to life on the tarmac. The clock ticked on. The elevator doors opened with a metallic ding, and Detective Anton Delacroix strode into the dimly lit basement level of the Redwood City Law Enforcement Data Center. His badge clipped to his belt swung with every hurried step. A sleepy clerk looked up from behind a plexiglass window. "Detective, it's not office hours. I need access to archived forensic reports," Anton said sharply. "Case 5921-B, Raymond Kincaid homicide." The clerk frowned. "That's sealed. You'd need supervisor clearance." Anton slammed his badge against the glass. "Governor's Council is expecting an update now. Open it." The clerk hesitated, then sighed. Typing into his terminal, the mechanical lock on the archive room clicked. "Fifth cabinet down," he muttered. Anton pushed through the door, heart hammering. Rows of metal cabinets lined the narrow space. He rushed to cabinet 5, scanning labels, crime scene photos, ballistics, fingerprint reports. Then he spotted it. 5921-B, secondary forensics, unprocessed. He yanked the drawer open. Inside, a sealed envelope stamped "suppressed, internal use only." Anton froze. "Suppressed?" He ripped the envelope open. A thick folder slid out, marked with a faded timestamp. "Processed 5/17, never submitted to trial evidence." Inside were photographs, charts, typed reports. He flipped pages rapidly. Footprint casts, foreign fibers, a partial DNA sample. And then his breath caught. A firearm residue test. Anton's eyes widened. "Gunshot residue on the windowsill?" He read faster. "Consistent with proximity discharge of a 9mm firearm. No matching residue on victim or Leonard Jackson." He fumbled for his phone, snapping photos of every page. A handwritten note at the end made his stomach twist. "Sample inconclusive due to mishandled chain of custody. Advised to omit from trial submission." Anton muttered a curse under his breath. They buried it. If a firearm had been discharged from outside the penthouse and Leonard had no residue, it meant someone else had been there. Someone who fired a weapon. Someone staging the scene. He turned to the last page, a crime scene sketch. A fire escape marked along the side of the building. A highlighted boot print. Size 11. Leonard's shoe size was 9. Anton's pulse spiked. "That's it. That's the link." A second intruder. He snapped the final photos, then dialed furiously. "Batista," answered the security chief. "Chief," Anton gasped. "I've got suppressed forensic evidence. Gunshot residue on the penthouse windowsill. A boot print size 11. Not Leonard's. And instructions to omit the report. This is proof they staged the scene." A pause. Batista's voice turned grave. "Send me everything, now." Anton sent the files. "I'll escalate to the governor's office," Batista said. "It's cutting close." "How close?" Anton demanded. "The boarding gate opens in 45 minutes. Anton's stomach dropped. "Tell them to stop that transfer, Batista," he said urgently. "They're flying an innocent man into the abyss." "I'm trying," Batista replied, voice clipped. "Stay by your phone." She hung up. Anton leaned against the filing cabinet, chest heaving. He stared at the envelope stamped "suppressed" in red ink. "I won't let them bury you, Leonard," he whispered. He snapped a final photo of the stamp itself. Outside, the sun finally breached the horizon, casting golden light through the city skyline. In the airport holding room, Leonard Jackson stared at the clock. 6:41 a.m. Eclipse stirred beside him, ears twitching. Leonard rubbed the dog's back absently. "Feels like the end, boy," he murmured. The door buzzed. Helen appeared, breathless. "They're reviewing new evidence," she said, voice trembling. "Anton found something." Leonard's gaze lifted, hope flickering. "Will it be enough?" Helen swallowed hard. "I don't know," she whispered, "but they're trying." Batista appeared behind her, phone pressed to her ear, face tense. Helen gripped Leonard's hand. "Hold on," she whispered. "They're still fighting." Leonard looked down at Eclipse, who pressed closer, tail sweeping slowly. He closed his eyes. "Don't let them run out of time," he whispered. In the control tower, a supervisor announced over the intercom. "Flight 722 to Valmira. Final boarding call in 20 minutes." And somewhere, a governor's council stared at a phone, a fax machine whirring beside him, while political calculus weighed against a man's life. The countdown was still running, and the window was closing. Chief Batista paced her office at the airport security command center, phone pressed so tightly to her ear it left a mark on her skin. Her other hand clenched and unclenched at her side. "Governor's Council, please," she snapped. "You've seen the files. We have suppressed forensic evidence, chain of custody violations, and a second suspect with motive and opportunity." A pause. She listened, lips thinning. I understand, but this isn't just politics anymore, she pressed. We're about to deport a man into a system with no appeals, no extradition treaty. If you don't stop this now, you're complicit in sending an innocent man to die. Another pause. Her eyes darted to the wall clock, 6:53 a.m. Please, she said, quieter. This is our last chance. She hung up, chest rising and falling rapidly. Outside the office, Helen stood gripping Leonard's transfer paperwork, Eclipse sitting loyally beside her. Her face was pale, eyes rimmed with fatigue and desperate hope. Batista stepped out. Still no formal stay, she said grimly. They're deliberating. Helen's voice cracked. Deliberating? Leonard's about to be shackled onto a plane. I know, Batista said, jaw tight. But they're scared. Political fallout, legal precedent. They're stalling. Helen's fists trembled. Then stall them harder, she pleaded. You're the one here. You see him. You know he doesn't deserve this. Batista held her gaze. A ripple of conflict crossed the chief's stern features. Then, resolve. She picked up the radio on her belt. Command, this is Chief Batista, she spoke calmly. Hold transfer procedure for detainee Jackson. Repeat, hold transfer. A burst of static. Chief, we're already en route to Gate 12 for loading. I said hold. Her voice hardened, slicing through the radio. Silence. Roger that, holding position. Helen's breath whooshed out, half relief, half disbelief. I just bought us minutes, Batista said grimly. But it won't last. She stepped closer to Helen, lowering her voice. Miss Griggs, once they board him, it's out of my hands. Federal authority takes over on that jet, and they will board him unless I have something legally binding to override. Helen's phone buzzed violently. A message from Anton. Just spoke to Governor's legal counsel. They're drafting an emergency stay order. Waiting for the governor's signature. Hold the plane. Helen showed it to Batista. The chief's eyebrows shot up. How long? Helen texted frantically. Anton replied, estimate 10 to 15 minutes. They're scrambling. Governor's in transit. Batista exhaled sharply. Damn it. She radioed again. Command, this is Batista. No movement of detainee Jackson without direct clearance from me. Any attempt to override triggers immediate escalation. Copy, Chief, came the reply. Batista turned to Helen. You've got 15 minutes max. After that, I don't know what cover I have left. Helen blinked back tears. 15 minutes is more than I dared to hope. Inside the transfer wing, Leonard sat quietly as a guard checked the chain on his wrist restraints. Eclipse lay curled beside him, muzzle resting across Leonard's foot. He looked at the clock. 6:59 a.m. Almost time, he murmured. The door creaked open. Helen rushed in. They're writing the stay order, she blurted. We're close, closer than ever. Leonard's eyes softened. Closer still isn't there, he said gently. Helen knelt beside him. I'm not leaving until you're free, she whispered fiercely. Not today, not ever. Eclipse pressed his head into Leonard's lap. Batista stepped in behind them, phone to her ear. Yes, Governor's Council, she spoke tightly. I'm holding transfer. Yes, yes. A pause, then she turned, eyes alight. They're faxing it now. Helen gasped. A stay? Batista nodded. Governor's signature pending. It'll be official the moment I receive it. Her phone beeped. A text from the airport admin. Final boarding call for Flight 722. Gate requests clearance for detainee. Batista looked at Helen. Time's up. Helen's heart pounded. Tell them to wait. I can't tell them anymore, Batista said hoarsely. I can only stall. She pointed to the fax machine down the hall. Go, watch for it. Helen bolted. The machine was whirring. A single sheet began to emerge. Outside, a plane engine roared to life. Inside the transfer wing, a security officer radioed, Chief, command requesting final confirmation for detainee delivery. Batista grabbed the radio. Stand by. Chief, they're pressuring. They want authorization. Batista's eyes burned into the hallway. Stand by. Helen's fingers snatched the fax the second it printed. A bold header across the top, emergency stay of transfer order. Signed, Governor Elias Kent. Helen sprinted. Batista, she screamed, holding up the page. The chief spun. Leonard lifted his head. Eclipse barked. Batista seized the paper, scanning it in 2 seconds flat. Then she lifted the radio, voice ironclad. This is Chief Batista. Transfer of detainee Jackson is hereby canceled under emergency stay order, signed by the Governor of California. Do not proceed. Return detainee to holding. Authorization code Delta 17. A long silence crackled over the line. Then, copy that, Chief, standing down. Helen sank to her knees, sobbing. Leonard stared at her, stunned. I'm not going anywhere, he whispered. Batista gave him a tired, relieved smile. Not today. Leonard's head dropped forward, tears spilling freely. Helen crawled to his side, wrapping her arms around him. Eclipse climbed onto his lap, tail wagging furiously. You're not getting on that plane, Helen whispered into his ear. We did it. Leonard buried his face in her shoulder, overwhelmed. Batista folded the stay order carefully. For the record, she said softly, I'd have delayed them no matter what. But now, we've got paper. Helen looked up at her, tears shining. Thank you. Batista nodded. Don't thank me yet. We've got a long road ahead, but today, you get to stay on it. Leonard hugged Eclipse tightly. For the first time in years, the ticking clock wasn't counting down toward the end. It was counting forward, toward a second chance. A pale morning sun washed over Redwood International Airport as Leonard sat quietly in a small administrative room, free from shackles for the first time in years. Eclipse curled up at his feet, gently snoring, chest rising and falling in peaceful rhythm. Helen sat across from him, holding a paper cup of coffee, her hair messy, her eyes red, but a quiet smile tugging at her lips. I still can't believe it, Leonard murmured. Helen leaned forward, resting her chin on her palm. You're not dreaming, she said softly. I checked, twice. Leonard chuckled weakly, rubbing Eclipse's head. They were really gonna put me on that plane, he whispered. But they didn't, Helen reminded him. You're here. You're safe. He lifted his gaze to her. For how long? Helen's smile faltered. As long as it takes, she said firmly. Anton's already filing to reopen the case, and the governor's office is launching a formal inquiry. Leonard stared at his hands. 5 years. 5 years stolen. 5 years branded a criminal. He looked up at Helen again. I don't know how to be free anymore. Helen's eyes softened. You don't have to figure it all out today, she said gently. We'll take it slow. She stood and crossed to him, sitting beside him. We'll go home, she whispered. We'll let Eclipse show you the couch. We'll watch dumb movies. We'll walk him along Redwood Creek again. Leonard swallowed hard. That sounds impossible. Helen nudged his shoulder playfully. Then let's make the impossible happen. A knock at the door interrupted them. Batista entered, her posture relaxed for the first time. They're here, she announced quietly. Behind her, Anton DeLoqua appeared, holding a thick folder under his arm. He gave Leonard a tired but genuine nod. Morning, Jackson. Leonard rose slowly. Detective? Anton stepped forward, setting the folder on the table. You're officially off transfer status, he said. The stay order holds until the court reviews the new evidence. Leonard blinked. So I'm what? Not free yet, Anton clarified, but no longer under immediate deportation or federal custody. Helen squeezed Leonard's hand. That's enough for today, she whispered. Anton's gaze softened. I'm sorry it took so long, he said quietly, but I promise, we're gonna finish this, and we're gonna make them answer for it. Leonard gave a faint nod. I'd like that. Batista cleared her throat. There's media outside, she warned. They're waiting for a statement. Leonard looked at Helen. She smiled knowingly. Later, she said, shaking her head. You don't owe them anything today. He smiled back. Yeah, later. Batista gestured toward the side exit. I've arranged a private route out, she said. No cameras. Helen stood gathering their things. Come on, she said, taking Leonard's arm. He hesitated. Wait. He crouched beside Eclipse, rubbing behind his ears. You ready to go home, boy? He whispered. Eclipse's tail thumped happily. Leonard smiled. Yeah, he murmured. Me too. He stood following Helen and Batista down the quiet hallway. Outside, the morning had brightened, clouds parting over Redwood City. For the first time in 5 years, Leonard stepped beyond institutional walls without chains, without guards at his side, just Helen, an Eclipse, a man, a woman, a loyal dog. A story that wasn't finished, but no longer written in fear. Helen laced her fingers with his as they walked toward her waiting truck. Where to first? She asked softly. Leonard gazed toward the distant hills. Anywhere, he said quietly. As long as I'm walking next to you. Eclipse barked once, trotting ahead, his tail high like a banner. And together, under the soft light of a world rediscovered, they stepped forward, toward healing, toward answers, toward a life reclaimed. Not as a prisoner, not as a victim, but as a survivor. And beside him a dog who had never stopped believing.